Ghost in the Shell is directed by Rupert Sanders and stars Scarlett Johansson as the Major, and this is the American live-action adaptation of Masamune Shirow's original manga and Mamoru Oshii's 1995 film, a film that I'm a humongous fan of. That film is very inspirational to me. It's one of my favorite animations of all time. So I went into this film about 50% ecstatic that it's even happening, because I've loved anime for a long time. I adored the standalone complex show. I thought it was really fantastic. And I have wanted Hollywood to adopt anime and realize how inspirational it can be and see the art in it and not just treat it as this thing that is Japanese, that's not for the United States, and realize just how awesome it is and how many of our films have been inspired by anime. And so I was 50%, as I said, ecstatic. The other 50% of me remembered a little film called Dragon Ball Evolution and a little film called Speed Racer. Two times in which I have been horrifically violated by American live-action adaptations of anime, in particular Dragon Ball Evolution. As you guys know, I'm a humongous DBZ fan, and that is my least favorite movie of all time. So I was very conflicted. I was like, I want this to be so good, but oh my god, don't get excited because, things that have happened in the past and depression sets in and loneliness and death. This adaptation of Ghost in the Shell follows the Major, a girl who was in a terrible accident and her body was reconstructed, and now she is part of Section 9, a futuristic police force that hunts down cyber criminals, and in this case, they are hunting Kuze, a man who has launched a one-man war against a robotics company that he says has harmed him and many other people in the past. So, how was this movie? Good. This movie was good. This is one of the most visually faithful adaptations I have ever seen of anything. Spectacular cinematography. They have created Masamune Shirow's world to a T. This is a gorgeous film that is so stunning to look at. I think CGI is a fantastic tool, but if it's overused, it becomes noticeable. In this film, there is quite a bit of it, and it melds with some breathtaking production design virtually seamlessly. The world of this movie is so well realized. This is the Ghost in the Shell universe. On screen, big budget. They nailed that aspect of the movie down pat. There's also quite a bit of sequences that are direct recreations of Mamoru Oshii's film. Now, what concerned me going in, amongst a lot of things, was that they were just going to be hollow recreations of these scenes that I love so much from the original film, without much substance underneath. Gratefully, that's not really the case. This movie does retain a lot of the substance that Mamoru Oshii's original film has, while it's not as fully realized as that anime film, which is just fucking perfect in my mind. It is a really good try, and they got really close to nailing the substance as well. The original film dealt a lot with the line between humanity and AI, the blur there, the gray area there, and what really is the deciding factor between the two. And that is recreated pretty well in this film because Major as a character is very conflicted. She has memories of her past that sometimes glitch into her visual that she's looking at, and she's seeing things and suddenly she gets this flashback or an image gets inserted into whatever she's looking at, and she is recalling a past that she believes she has. But the people who created her are saying that's false. And so she wants to do research about herself and really dive deep into whatever she was before. So in regards to things they actually improved upon, that is something they actually got better. The character of the Major in this film is actually a lot more compelling than she was in the original anime film. There really isn't much to improve in that film, but if I were to pinpoint one thing, I would say they did a pretty smart thing in focusing on fleshing out the Major a little more, because I would say that's the one thing in the anime that could have been better. Towards the second and third act, I won't get into spoilers, but she learns more about her past, she starts delving into her history, and you can actually feel a lot more for her as a character and as a protagonist, because it's more of a rich and conflicted background than Motoko Kusanagi had in the original film, and they actually improved upon that. The original film also touched a lot on gender identity. Motoko was very curious about herself. There's a scene where she sees a mannequin of herself that looks exactly like her in a store window that's just being used for display purposes, and she grows even more curious about herself in that sequence. This film has some of that. There's a really great scene where she talks to a human woman because she simply wants to touch her face and figure out what it is that makes her human, what's different about her eyelids, what's different about her lips. It's a really fantastic scene, and that does hint that this version of the Major is also very curious about this herself, because she clearly doesn't view herself from a sexual perspective in this movie either, just like in Mamoru Oshii's original film. She will often take her clothes off in front of people, making the Bato in this film feel uncomfortable, just like in the anime. There is a very good recreation of some of these themes. It's not a home run. I would say it's a solid base hit. This film is dumbed down in some ways when compared to the original film. This is more of a straightforward good guy, bad guy scenario where the original film was a little blurred. At first. I don't want to get into spoilers again, but towards the third act of this movie, that line between good and evil does get blurred a little bit more. And that was something I really appreciated, because some people that you think are good, perhaps they have other motivations. And while it could be viewed as your typical American twist to a screenplay where something kind of gets thrown at you at the last second, I think it's a little more complex than that. One of my biggest praises with this movie, and something that I am so happy to report, is that the score might actually be better than the original. Clint Mansell, who I think is a genius, has delivered a gorgeous, fucking eargasmic score. I cannot wait to buy it. You do get the original chorus, that amazing choral arrangement that is in the opening of the original film. This time it's at the end credits. And while I was watching the opening of this, watching the Major be created, I was like, man, I wish I could have Kenji Kawai's amazing score right now. But then Clint Mansell started, and I was like, oh my God, this is fucking awesome. This music is amazing. And I really can't praise the music enough. It really sold this world, and it just sounded so good. Let's talk about the Scarlett Johansson thing, because it's pretty much impossible to avoid. There's a lot of controversy, of course, because this is a movie, and movies get controversy, and so do TV shows. Everything's controversial. She's white, and Motoko Kusanagi is technically a Japanese woman in the comics as well as the film, despite the fact that she is almost entirely cyborg. Her brain is still, a Japanese woman. And so people were very upset about that. Look, there's nothing I can do about it. I can only judge the final finished product. And ScarJo is great in this movie. She's really good as this character. And most people in Japan, there's a really great video on YouTube of someone showing the picture of Scarlett to Japanese people in Japan. And universally, 100% of them are like, she looks great. I'm excited to see it.
でも日本人がやるよりいいんじゃんって思うけどな。なあ。なんかアニメやからな。そんななんかな。目の色とか。確かに。ちょっと日本人離れした方がぽいやん。
いやでも僕はその批判については。いや別に日本人じゃないといけないってことないと思うし、そうですね。別に。
It's really more so here in America that we've got up in arms about all this lately, like Iron Fist. I just talked about it in my review of Iron Fist. It's a thing now. It's like we have to make everything perfectly ethnically cast and nobody can play things and blah, blah, blah. She's really good in the movie. She is. There's nothing I can do about it. Would it have been better with an Asian woman? It's the same screenplay. It's the same dialogue. It's the same directing. It might have been more faithful, but in the end, ScarJo is really good in this movie. She kicks ass in the action scenes, and she gives a lot of emotion to the role, about as much as you could give to a role playing a mostly cyborg person. There is also an entire storyline, which I cannot spoil, that is dedicated to what she was before. And I think some fans might be confused by it. Some might think it's cool. Others might hate it. I really actually don't know what people will think of that storyline. For myself, I thought it added a very off-kilter emotion to this film that I've never really seen in another. Something very original that I haven't seen done before in a film. A very interesting familial tie that I thought was very charming, actually. And I don't know what people think of it, but I am very pleased to report that this is an extremely faithful adaptation. The things they have changed actually in some ways did improve it. There is a little bit of a dumbing down of the material. I was afraid it was just going to be a bunch of Matrix action scenes, but it's actually not. There isn't really like a big epic sequence. Like there's no like half hour, the end of the Matrix sequence where it's just balls out action. There's a lot of amazing action moments that are gloriously beautiful, but there is actually more of a focus on the sci-fi element and this odd futuristic Blade Runner type feel. For some people, it's going to feel derivative, but they don't realize that Ghost in the Shell was so inspirational to movies like Dark City and The Matrix. And if you were one of the people like me back in the day who watched it when it was first in its heyday, then you understand how much of this film has impacted other films in the world, the original 1995 film. And it has recreated extremely well here. The villain Kuze also took me off guard with the way they took his character. I didn't expect it, and it surprised me. Is it as good as the Puppet Master? No, it is not as interesting on a psychological level as the original film is, and that's this film's biggest flaw, I think. But from a visual perspective, the action in the film, the performances, I really like Bato as well. They recreated him really well. His love of basset hounds, which is also Mamoru Oshii's big thing, is basset hounds. They really got a lot right in this movie, and I think it is getting too much hate based off of the race of the lead actress. Beyond that, I am very pleased. This is no Dragon Ball Evolution. It's no Speed Racer. This is the best American live-action anime adaptation that we have ever received, and I really hope that this bodes well for the future of things like perhaps Akira or Cowboy Bebop. It's not perfect. The themes and the emotion of the psychological aspect of the original film isn't as good as it was in '95. But everything else is extremely faithfully recreated, and the things they changed, I liked. I'm going to give Ghost in the Shell an A-. Guys, I hope you check out this movie. Give it a chance. It is nowhere near as bad as some people were concerned with. Don't judge a book by its cover. Go see it, or in this case a movie, go see it, and then decide for yourself. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.